I want to show you how scarily simple it is to make these Draculas, and I'm gonna stop talking in that accent right now. You're welcome. So all you need is aluminum foil, water, plaster gauze strips, and Celluclay, and some acrylic paint. Seriously, it's that easy. Start with a sheet of aluminum foil, and at the bottom, begin to tear a vertical line up to about the middle. This is going to be the body of your vampire. I'm just now creating the head of the vampire by smooshing it in and then creating the legs. It's important when you're smooshing aluminum foil to start with a gentle touch. If you crunch it all together right away, then it will become too small and too tight. You want to keep it a little bit loosey-goosey. Mix up your Celluclay and then start layering the Celluclay directly on the aluminum foil. Celluclay is a paper pulp. So when you get it, it's going to be dry. And when you mix it up, it's going to be super dusty. So I recommend you do it outside. I don't use measurements because I'm not that kind of gal, but I usually kind of go by feel. So start with putting the Celluclay into a bowl, breaking it up because it is a little clumpy, and then slowly adding water. It should have the feel and texture of clay. Celluclay will stick to anything. It's amazing. No need to do anything special to this aluminum foil. Just go ahead and use probably about gumball size pieces, flatten it between your fingers and lay it on the aluminum foil. Overlap it as you go and that will help it stick. No need to slip and score. Like I said, the stuff is amazing and will stick to anything. I covered the legs completely first on the front. Then I went up and I did the head, and then I flipped the whole thing over and did the back. Celluclay does take a while to dry, so when you are completely finished with this piece, you'll definitely want to dry it in front of a fan. You'll also want to rotate it every couple of hours. That way it dries through and through. I have noticed that if you let it set or sit, I guess I should say, for a while and it's damp, it might start to mold. And nobody wants that. Speaking of scary. So make sure that you flip it over as you're allowing it to dry. All right, so here I am very slowly, I might add, adding the bits and pieces of Celluclay to cover the front and the back. Here's the fun fact. You can sand Celluclay down, giving it a nice smooth finish. Me, personally, the reason I love Celluclay so is because it has a nice lumpy texture that really lends itself well to giving your artwork like an antiqued look. When you're completely finished with the front and flipping it over and doing the back, then it's time to get out the plaster gauze and make the wings for your vampire. So for that, you'll simply need to cut some sheets of plaster gauze. I'm using rigid wrap, which is a type of plaster gauze, and I like to really wring it out between my fingers. You'll notice I did place some plastic wrap down. That way it does not stick to my surface, and it's easier for me to transport to that fan to help it dry. All I did was I lifted my Dracula up, dipped my plaster wrap in water, and then shaped it to give it kind of an organic wing shape. Doesn't have to be pretty or perfect. I'm just going for the arch at the top and the kind of scalloped line at the bottom. Now I did want to give it kind of a ribbed look, like what you would see in a bat's wings. So for the ribbed look, I'm going to use Celluclay. The great thing is that the rigid wrap or the plaster wrap will immediately adhere to the damp Celluclay, so you don't have to do anything special. I did use 2 to 3 layers of the rigid wrap, and I did that just to make the wings a little bit stronger. And I'm telling you, they're pretty sturdy. When I get ready to hang this on my tree, all I have to do is hot glue a wire to the back to get it to hang on my tree. So here I am now with the Celluclay, kind of rolling it out into a coil to create those ridges or those parts for my vampire's wing. When this part dries, definitely allow this to dry flat. You'll want it to dry flat. That way the wings will adhere to the back. If you move your vampire too much during the drying process, your wings might fall off. I did have a wing that was a little bit too heavy. So to fix that so that the wing didn't fall off, all I did was add another piece of plaster wrap along the back side of the vampire. And I liked using plaster wrap because it dries a lot faster than the Celluclay. And it seems to be a little bit stronger. So here I am rolling out those coils. Again, no need to slip, no need to score. The two will adhere together immediately. It's amazing. I will say this, if you make an extra amount of Celluclay, and I always end up making too much, then what you can do is wrap that in plastic and put it in your fridge. I find that it keeps a lot better if I have it wrapped really airtight and placed in the fridge. If you leave it out, even though it's wrapped airtight, I have noticed it does tend to dry out a little bit. Although I have been known to just kind of add a little bit more Celluclay and water to the mix to bring it back to life. So here I am just kind of finishing up this wing with a little bit of that Celluclay and the plaster. I will do the exact same thing on the other side, but I'll spare you the video of that. I'm pretty sure you get the point. I love that you can make these wings and that these wings then act as the arms. I totally wasn't going for a mobster look when I did start painting. I just kind of went in the direction of the vampire. And it was really fun to kind of come up with something that was not exactly what I had planned. You know, that's actually the very best thing about creating. And with one side finished, I did exactly the same thing on the other side. So pretty simple. And I wasn't trying to make it symmetrical or anything. Like I said, the wings are kind of an organic shape. Use 2 strips of that plaster and you'll find that it works really well. Once the 2 strips are added, then go ahead and start using your Celluclay to adhere those other parts of the wing. Also, you'll notice that I'm using my finger to kind of attach the Celluclay from the wing to the body. That'll also help anchor those wings to the Dracula body. Piece of cake. Now, once these guys dried, and it did take about 24 hours in front of the fan because I wanted to make sure they were completely dry, painting on something wet like Celluclay tends to kind of bring it back to life, making it kind of a mushy surface again. So you'll definitely want to make sure that it's completely dried through and through. Once it was completely dried, then I took them outside and I just went bananas with some watered down black paint and painted it black. I used watered down paint because I noticed it was a lot easier to scrub and dig into those small crevices of the Celluclay with a watered down black. From there, like I said, I kind of had a vague idea of where I was going with these vampires, but not completely. So I added a shirt. And what I love about the Celluclay, like I said, is painting it completely black and then going over it with a dry brush because it gives it that antiqued look. So here I am with kind of a muted white and I'm going over it with a dry brush to give him a shirt. I actually had more of a John Travolta Pulp Fiction vibe in mind when I first started. Inside the kind of, I'm going to call them valleys of the wing, I added a purple, but it was too much the same value as the wing. So I eventually ended up creating a couple of lighter values of that purple and adding those inside of the wing also just to give it a little bit more depth. I did the same with the face. I started out with a really deep purple and then eventually continued to add a lighter and lighter purple. But again, using that dry brush is what's going to give it that really great antiqued kind of feel. When I was finished with that, then I let it dry just a pinch. Acrylic paint is fabulous because it dries so stinking fast. And then I started to go for it with a very small brush, creating kind of the details of my outfit. Like I said, Pulp Fiction was what I had in mind, but because of the weird lumpy, bumpy nature of the face, when I started painting, mobster faces just kind of happened. So here I am using that teeny tiny brush to create my tie and eventually had to give the tie a little bit of a highlight just to kind of make it stand out. And then I used my very small brush to give the pants a little bit of pinstriping, which was super fun to do. The best part about creating on a surface like this is nothing has to be pristine or perfect. I have perfectionist tendencies when it comes to painting. And one of the reasons I love painting on this surface is because it kind of breaks me out of that a little bit, using that scratchy, rough surface really is fun to work on. When you're working with acrylic paint does have a little bit of a shine to it. So that's also fabulous because it's going to give your vampire a little bit of a shine. But you might want to use Mod Podge because Mod Podge or any kind of varnish is going to strengthen your sculpture quite a bit. Another thing I did that is not included in this video because I get tired of filming is this. I used Mod Podge on the tops of the wings and on the black parts that stand out. Once I had the Mod Podge in place, I sprinkled black glitter, really fine black glitter on those parts. And that really, I felt like, gave my vampire a little bit of a even more spookier factor. So like I said, I went for it with this whole crazy mobster vibe and had so much fun creating these guys. I can't wait to hang them on my tree. I'll be sure to share them with you when I do. Thank you for letting me share this super easy craft with you guys.